Yeah, it is.
Hey, Wharf Rats, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Wes.
And here we are at Origins 50.
Yep.
Showing off a Forlorn Hope at the War Game HQ. And thank you so much to Brant and all the guys there for helping us out with that. We'll definitely have some video from that soon. But today we have, Wes, what do we have today?
Oh, today we're going to have a great interview with Michael Vitale, formerly of Nova Games, if you remember that a few decades ago, and some of the exciting developments they had, and what he's doing today in game designs.
Oh, I can't wait to find out more about that. Also, of course, we'll be giving away a game today on Cool Classics, SPWs, Tannenberg, and Galicia. So stay tuned to find out the winner of that. And finally,
Yes.
Wes, what do we have last?
Well, we have some more images of a Forlorn Hope,
Oh, yes.
more graphics to show you as this project is moving along quite wonderful.
Yeah, Tom has been hard at work on that, and we've been visiting a lot of printers here at Origins, trying to find the best match for the game, doing a lot of play testing, development, design on that, and hoping to get it done real soon. So stay tuned.
Yes, he did.
Okay, hey everybody, welcome back. I got
Yep,
Wes over
welcome back.
here, and Wes has got a very important guest today he'd like to introduce.
Yeah, this is somebody I've met the past few Compass Expos and have always enjoyed his stories and his work. This is Mike Vitale. Welcome to the Rat Chat Show.
Hey Mike.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really and everybody out there. It's a pleasure.
Well,
What would you guys like to talk about?
Oh,
Well-
I'm sure we can come up with something.
Anything?
yeah, I mean, what I was always fascinated hearing some of your stories at the expo and stuff was about you were one of the original members with Nova Games
That's
way
correct.
back in the day, and the Ace of Aces series, and you had something to do with that. And since we're sort of on a World War I kick because we have Herman Lettman's A Forlorn Hope coming to a crowdfunding in the fall. I would love to hear about how Aces started and Nova started, and particularly that World War I version of it.
Okay. Well, we have to step back into the Wayback Machine for
Yeah,
Please.
definitely.
1979. I went to Origins there to compete in the Panzer Group Guderian tournament for want of something else to do, and former high school mate of mine named Jim Rosinas had a booth. He self-published a game on the Angolan Civil War called Angola, and he had he had a booth. And the other fellow who was there was Joe Angelillo, who you may have heard of. He did some design work for SPI, notably Operation Typhoon, and he also did a game. Kiev in the Army Group South Quad.
Yep.
That's and Joe. Now I was like the seam guy because I went to high school with Jim and I went to college with Joe.
Mhm.
And I was teaching school in Manchester, Connecticut, where Joe lived, and we hooked back up. And he said he needed somebody to help him test Kiev, so I stepped up. I didn't know anything about publishing games at the time, but I helped him play test that. Went down to New York. One thing led to another. I got to write the players' notes and contribute a lot of rules and things to the process, and learned kind of under the covers how SPI did things. And we were back at Origins in '79. We got together and we decided we were going to start our own company. So I have a picture of the three of us standing there. Somebody took the picture, and that was the start. It was called Game Shop. Jim had called it Game Shop, and we just folded into that. And then we had a big meeting back in Connecticut with any interested parties, and we got about 16 people in Eastern Connecticut to show up. And Jim found this fella named Al Leonardi. And he said, he has this little book thing, and he brings these. I don't know if you can see. It's all handmade. This is the original Ace of Aces handmade, mimeographed pictures, and X's and O's, things crossed out, and
Very cool.
names on the back. I have possession of these. Al gave them to me a number of years ago.
Did he do that art for that?
he did he and his partner, Doug Kaufman, did a lot of the work. Now, I don't know who did what. To be perfectly honest, I really don't know who drew what, whether Doug drew them or Al drew them, but they're definitely hand drawn. I mean, you can take a look at,
Mhm.
and it's all done on mimeographs. So I think Al had a lot to do with it because he was a junior high school teacher, and this purple stuff was very common back in the day. It's mimeographed.
Using the school resources to run off some mimeographs.
Yeah. Well, I was guilty of that later, but yeah.
No, nobody ever does that.
Well,
No, nobody.
To make it real, Joe and I eventually got permission from the school Joe was teaching physics at to use the print shop after hours as long as we paid for materials. So we got to use the machinery, but we had to pay for all of the stuff that we used. So
very cool.
But to get back to the story of Ace of Aces, so we're having this meeting, and basically it was, you got to come up with some cash, you want in on this, or have an idea that you can fund and build yourself. So I didn't have any money. I was also a teacher, but I had an idea for a science fiction game, a little pocket game, because pocket games were, what was it was the name of the Texas company that went out of business, Metagaming.
Metagaming. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Steve Jackson came out of there. He basically had Steve Jackson there,
mm-hmm.
and then they had a lawsuit, and he ended up with Ogre. Yep. He got a company, and those guys went south. Yep. So anyway, I digress. Sorry. So Al had this. My friend Jim had actual experience in vanity book publishing. He worked for a company that used to that published books for professors at Yale. So very small print runs, and because they have to publish, so there's this little cottage industries probably associated with every Ivy League school that make print books for the faculty. Anyhow, he had that experience. This was mostly a book, and we just sort of went from there. And we didn't know what to expect. So it was just the four of us, Angelillo, Rosinas, Vitale, and Leonardi. Three paisans. and Rosinas. Well, I don't even know what ethnic background Jim was, but neither here nor there. So we get this all done in time for Origins 80. And we show up there. I show up with my little game. Joe had Hammer of Thor. Jim still had Angola, and we're bringing out this game with these little brown books called Ace of Aces.
Mm-hmm.
This is an original game shop. Yeah, I know it's backwards, but
check it out. No, it's not on our screen.
Yeah, okay. That's an original. I one copy of just about every print run, the first 3 or 4 print runs back in 1980, and I still have them.
Very cool.
So the actual books, as most people will know them from these brown books. And the first ones did not have any embossing on the side. We added that later. But here is what the artist that we got to draw the planes did there. Let's find a close range shot. Quickly. Here we go. Got you in the sights.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You can see the coronas going off, and if you're getting shot, you see bullets. So we brought these, it was difficult. We didn't have much money, but we managed to scrape enough together to print 2,000 copies. But the printer couldn't get them all to us in the deadline. But he drop shipped 200 to us, so we brought 200 to Origins. And long story short, we sold out. If we started Thursday, we sold out by Saturday morning.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, we sold out 200, and I learned how to. I got my pattern down on how to show people how to play this. I had them time me. I got it down to under a minute and a half.
Okay.
So don't ask me to do it now, but to explain how it was played. But we were so excited. I mean, we were walking around on air. We didn't know what to do. Al was very unassuming fellow, and he stood over in the corner. And I'm not an unassuming fellow, as you can tell by I'm pretty chatty. So I was perfectly happy to be a salesman in that instance. But we sold out by Saturday morning. We got Dunnigan, Jim Dunnigan, holding these books up in the SPI meeting, saying this is the kind of out of the box thinking that we need to be doing in order to expand the hobby. And we're going like, okay, we got people coming up to us. Now, one of the funny stories is that I told at Expo, Wes, you may remember this if you were you there? I can't remember who was there.
I've been there with you several times when you're talking, anyway. But I did not make your lecture because I had to go home early.
Oh, that's right. You didn't make the lecture, yeah. But your partner did for engine thieves.
Greg Singer did.
Anyway, so this story is I think it's pretty funny. So we're there. We don't have any books. We got people handing us money saying, when I get them? I says, well, we're going to get the other 1,800, but I don't know when. It's July. We'll be, August, hopefully. It turned out to be the first week or second week of September. We got the rest of them. But I'm there, and John Edwards, you familiar with John Edwards? Jedco, he's the guy that built Jedco games. He's there, and I'll try to do my best Australian. He goes, hi, I want these little brown things. Says, I want how many can you sell me? I said, we're out, John. He says, well, I want 100 of them, and I got to make a plane. How much is it? We worked it out. He hands me $700 in traveler's checks. He just signs all the checks, blank, and says, I gotta make a plane. I'm out of here. And hands me gave him a piece of paper. We didn't even have cards. We were teachers, and we didn't know what was going to happen. I think I gave him a piece of paper, said that we were going to sell it. 100 books when we get them. So convention's over. We're home. A couple of weeks go by. About 11 o'clock at night, a couple of weeks later, I get a phone call. Now, this is obviously way before, it's 1980. It's way before anybody's got call, spy phones or anything. I don't know who it is. So I'm picking up the phone, even though it's time for, I taught school. It's time for me to go to bed. It's weeknight. Actually, it was still summer. So strike that. I still was late. So I pick it up at 11 o'clock and I go, hello? He goes, hi, this is John Edwards. I buy something from you. And I'm literally like right now, I'm losing it. And I'm like holding the phone out in front of me trying to keep from laughing my brains out. And I go, yeah, John, you ordered 100 copies of Ace of Aces. We're going to send them to you. We haven't got them yet, but trust me, as soon as we have them, we're going to ship them right out to you. Okay. Right. All right. Then we hang up. I figured he got home. He checked his stubs right on the traveler's checks. And he had my name written down. He had this little piece of paper and he's going like, uh-oh.
What did I buy?
I better call this guy.
I wonder how many people he did that with too.
I don't know. He was in such a hurry. It doesn't come through the way I'd explained it, but he was in a real hurry. He was going to be afraid he was going to miss it. So he's like, I got to go. And he hands me all this money. So he wasn't alone. Now I was teaching school in 1980. I made $9,000 a year. In the cash box, that was my kid.
Wait, where did that come from?
Son.
9,000.
I'm being interviewed. Yes.
Sorry.
Hey, how you doing, son?
No, that was like great.
Play tester on Iberian Tide.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So anyway,
Sorry.
it's okay. So
that was wonderful. I loved it.
So I'm making $9,000 a year, right? In the cash box is $15,000 in traveler's checks, and other checks, and actual cash. And I'd never had that much money, like in front of me in cash before. And you just figure you're paranoid, and you figure that everyone knows you have $15,000 in cash. So on the way home, we're driving from outskirts of Philadelphia through, going back to Connecticut, and we have to stop to get something to eat. And I had him park the van so we got a window seat so I could watch the van. I says, I'm not leaving my eyes off the van, because you just figure I got to leave the cash box under a seat. Like there's a big sign, like a Warner Brothers cartoon pointing money here.
Oh yeah. I know that feeling.
It feels like that when you do something like that, doesn't it? Yeah.
So,
oh yeah.
So that was the start, and we had to learn a lot, and we got on Games 100. We obviously sold out the 1,800 copies very quickly. We went back for 5,000,
wow.
I think twice, and then we had to ratchet it up to 10,000 by Christmas.
Wow.
We had that, and then another 10,000. Eventually, we went to 20,000 print runs.
Wow.
after a couple of years, I think we were at 50,000, and I'm pretty sure that over the 10-year history that was still selling. I'm sure we sold well over 100,000 copies of that easily.
Where were you printing?
In Connecticut.
Okay.
In the print shop at the school, remember?
Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah. Jim handled that. Another funny story is, how did we determine who did what when we decided, the three of us, before Al showed up? We all wanted to be president. Now, I was teaching school, and we figured, Joe was teaching school, and Jim was just, still at the book publisher, but he wanted to quit and do this full time. And there's really only enough money to give somebody some money to show up every day and do stuff. So we actually did what wargamers do. We had a die roll off to see who was going to be serious. Jim won. This day, Joe and I haven't seen Joe in years, but during the course of Nova's existence, we would look at each other every once in a while. I wonder how things would be different if you or I won the die roll. Never gonna know.
Yeah.
So, I thought that was pretty funny. How do wargamers solve who's going to be president when everybody wants the job? Die roll.
Yeah.
Roll on.
Wow.
So I'm assuming Ace of Aces then was the biggest seller at that amount that you're talking about.
By far. So we decided immediately that because I did a board game, Joe did a board game, and Jim had a board game.
Right.
And we were probably going to sell more than 1,000 copies of any of them, which it turns out to be what happened. And I don't even know if Thor sold all those 1,000 copies. I finally did with mine eventually. It took years, but
that was Time Lag. Is that the one?
Yes. Which shameless plug department. Compass,
that's fine. Go ahead.
Compass has picked up the right to. I signed a contract, so they're going to publish Time Lag 2.0, and I'm working on that as we speak.
Very cool.
It's one of
I saw it at the expo.
Expo.
The really big map and all this. It looks really cool, and you've made a number of changes to it and updates and
it's way
multiplayer.
It's not a $5 game. Yeah. Well, not that we have a $5 game these days, but back then I think we sold Time Lag for $4.
Okay.
Even a little Ziploc. Do I have one floating around? I didn't bring one up, but whatever. Trust me, it was very small footprint, just like those metagaming games. But this one's going to be, double-sized map, 1 inch counters, lots of extra content. But it's going to take a while before that one sees the light of day. It's still got a lot of work to be done on it. But I've been expanding that by myself through the 90s, just for myself, and I've incorporated a lot of those changes into the new version that Compass is going to get.
Gotcha.
But back,
I'm not that familiar with that one. I obviously was familiar with Ace of Aces.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't.
I knew I've had a copy of that Angola game before, Angola game. I know it's not the one that was real popular. It's the other one.
Yes,
not in the MMP one. No.
Not that one. It's the other one. But I have had a copy of that game before that I had and sold. So I knew that one, but I wasn't real familiar with the other two.
It's the only game Jim ever made that I'm aware of. Certainly, Nova had anything to do with it. Now, why we changed from Game Shop to Nova is another story. That first year, seems there was a Midwest chain store called The Game Shop, and we got a letter from their lawyer cease and desist using this name, because he probably picked up, Ace of Aces said Game Shop on him, and he said, "Hey, it was different logo, different, but it wasn't the same. His was The Game Shop, 3 words. Ours was Game Shop, 1 word.
Yeah,
different, trade from a trademark standpoint. We probably could have fought it, but remember, 3 teachers and small print book publishers. Nobody had any money. We got our lawyer on the cheap, and we said, do we want to be spending our money paying a lawyer to fight this, or do we just want to change the name? So we said, we'll change the name. So as I recall, I came up with Nova Game Designs, and I asked Jim, I said, make the O like an exploding sun. And so that became our logo, which you can see there.
Oh, yeah.
And did you say you were involved with the company till what, about 1991 or something?
Correct.
Okay.
And
that was over 10 years then.
So. Yes. We it's hard running a business. That's why I have a lot of respect for Bill Thomas, because he looks like we lost Ryan. I have a lot of respect for Bill Thomas because it's hard running a business. It really is. You know, there's a lot of banana peels out there to slip on.
Sorry, I got disconnected for a second, but I'm back.
Yeah.
And it's still recording.
Out of all the game companies, I think, you know, he has the most business experience.
Well, it certainly, having been on the business side of it as a learner, and we made many errors that none of them sunk us until the end, when what happened at Nova got to the point where, to get any further, we were always in debt to the bank. We never got to the point where we could self-finance. We missed that window. We had an opportunity, but that's another story entirely. But the point was, we didn't. So they wanted to bring in an investor, and they wanted 51% of the company. So I decided to bow out. I kept 5%, gave up my other 20%. And we had Joe Angelillo had left years earlier. So we had that 25% sitting around. So that's 45 of each. One of these guys gave up like 3 or something and got the 51. And they kept, 22 each. And that's what brought in that guy and his wife with the money. And she was we were told she had business experience. She did not. It did not go well. She'd had business experience, but not in running a small business. She was a mid-level manager for an accountancy firm.
Yeah.
That's not what we really needed. And I didn't know that, but I was backing out at the time. I was getting married the next year, and my house was on the line, and I needed to sell and move to another place, and yada, yada, yada. So I left. I make a believe, but I left.
But correct me if I'm wrong, you had the most popular war game of that period of time in your hands that you sold, correct?
Axis and Allies.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So tell us about that, because I would think that would be a money cow, you know?
Sure. Well,
there's golden goose there.
It is for Larry. Larry Harris, the designer of that game. Who, actually, Al found him. You know, Jim found Al. Al found Larry, starving to death in New London, and he had this little game called 1942 as an homage to his father, who served in World War II. And we went to his place in London, and we played it. He had little balsa wood pieces. He made everything out of little pieces of plastic and balsa wood, and he got little soldiers from like Airfix, the old HO and OO size soldiers, and he had a few of those. And after we looked at each other and said, "This is the game we always wanted to play. It's better than Risk. It's more involved than Risk, but it's not, a super cerebral war game where you have to spend a lot of time with arithmetic and stuff. This is a beer and pretzels, throw lots of dice and have lots of fun." So we said, we got to figure out a way to do this. So I got the job of trying to figure out how to make it in plastic. And after a few interviews with mold makers, realized that it was going to be $20,000 to make a mold. And we published 5,000 copies of that for $20,000 in paper and cardboard. So it was a no-brainer. But I investigated that, and we came to the conclusion we had to do it in paper and cardboard. We had a meeting because, Larry called it 1942. And I remember distinctly saying, well, folks, 1942 is not a great marketing name. I'm sorry, it just isn't. It doesn't really evoke much of anything. I said, how about Axis and Allies? It's alliterative. And I said, and by the way, Axis has 4 letters in it. Jim, why don't you work up where the AX is the Germans? Yes, we can't use the swastika. Use an iron cross. The IS is the Japanese rising sun flag. You can still do that. And then the Allies is 6 letters, and you got 2 each for the Americans, the British, and the Russians. I said, it's great. So we have this really garish logo that we trademarked. I still can use it on T-shirts, and hats, which I've done just for personal use and to give away as gifts. And I went from there, and we started calling Axis and Allies. So that's my contribution to that. Obviously, I did a lot of play testing as well, and rules tweaks. But Joe Angelillo really was the developer on that project, and he hammered most of the stuff out. But my contribution was the name. And eventually, Larry, after we went to 82 Origins in San Francisco and broke that there, and everybody's really aghast when you walk around the room and you keep bumping into people playing your game. It's really,
Yeah.
you understand that, Wes, right? So I don't,
Barely, but yes.
if you experience that. I don't know your history as well as maybe I should, but
Oh, I definitely experienced that. Yes.
okay,
Yes.
then you guys know. It's like you shake your head and you're like, you don't want to get it. You want to go over and see what they're doing, but you don't want to like. I don't know. It's hard to describe.
I go over the top. I'm like, oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, yeah, that's my
you
game.
introduce
Let's
yourself.
get a photograph. I'll sign it for you.
I've gotten more comfortable with that as the years have worn on, but at the beginning it was like, wow, this is like too much. So anyhow, Larry, back to Larry. Larry did something I think I don't think anybody's done before or since. He goes to Milton Bradley. Actually, he self-published the next two games, Broadsides and Boarding Parings, and I think it's called Six Caesars is what it was originally called. And or Conquest of the Empire, I think is what they changed it to, but I think he called it Six Caesars originally. And he goes to Milton Bradley. Now, he self-published those other two games with Don Lowry, down in the Citadel in New London was a game store there. And he
I know.
familiar with him. And I think they funded those two themselves. And he goes to, a couple of years later, he goes to Milton Bradley and he makes the I think it was 84. And he not only gets them to say, his pitch was, remember your old, broadsides and American Heritage Civil War game and the like, hit the beach. He said, do that again. Those people have grown up. They still like battle games, and you've got a market here for this sort of thing. And he talked them into picking up Axis and Allies, Broadsides and Boarding Parties, and Six Caesars, which they called Conquest of the Empire. And he comes to him and says, I made a deal. He says, you guys want to, he says, I get half, you get half. Where do we sign?
Really?
Where do we sign? And he said, oh, by the way, they're giving me a job. Game design. So it's like touchdown, Larry. I give him all the credit in the world because as far as I know, Milton Bradley didn't go out and pull in game designers from the outside. If so, it was rarely. And he got that done for himself. And he's been doing Axis and Allies games ever since.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
more power to Larry. I just, I have nothing but respect for, his moxie and getting that done and secured his future. It's very difficult for aspiring game designers to fall into that sort of what you might call serendipitous luck. He made some of it on his own, of course, but you still got to get him to agree, and he was able to do that.
And the interesting part was, I mean, even though he was saying and marketing as these people have grown up and now they're still playing these games, those games hit right when I was, 12, 13, 14.
Okay.
And we were ecstatic to have them. I mean, we were just so excited at that age to have them. So it really hit that, older people and younger people and all in between.
The only had was Risk. That was it.
Yeah, of course.
And everybody had that.
When they started coming out, actually, very honestly, I was just getting out of gaming. I'd been, really heavy into Avalon Hill, SPI, and all that. And then they started coming out with these little toys on boards, and I'm going, this isn't where I want to go. But now, and I only say that because then I didn't do anything with gaming hardly at all until about 2018 or so. And then came back, and there are these kinds of games, and I love them. They're great for being quick. I remember playing it with my daughter during the pandemic when she was living here, and she enjoyed it. So it was fun.
Yeah. So as far as I know, because Hasbro bought everybody. Mill Bradley, they bought Avalon Hill. They use it as an imprint now, and Wizards of the Coast, yada yada. Dungeons and Dragons people. I mean, they got all of it. As far as I know, and I'm not positive of this, I think there's still a residual check going to Mr. Leonardi as the only survivor in Nova Game Designs. I don't know how much it is. I'm sure it's not, it's not independently wealthy stuff. It's probably a couple of grand a year, even if it's 5. I mean, I have no, that's great. If he's still getting that, and I don't really know because it's not. I feel funny. I've had some contact with him. I feel funny asking, and I think one of the guys, either Peter or one of the other fellas, mentioned that there's still a small check that comes in from
cool.
Hasbro every once in a while.
That's great.
So Al needs every nickel he can get. I mean, he's had a rough go of it the last 10 years or so health-wise. Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Now, Aces and Aces did make a reappearance several years back. What was the deal with that? How did that all occur?
Well, this guy here's the Powerhouse series, the original.
Yeah, that's it right there. Yeah,
the one that I had to do the programming so that we could make this, because all the distributors are coming to us. Okay, Grace of Aces is great. Handy Rotary, the brown things. What do you got next for us? And it's like, it's anytime you get a hit, anything, and people selling it, they go like, okay, you got to give me more. And it's always like, what? What do you mean more? You know how hard it was to do this? I'm like, oh. So once I figured that out, and we came out with this, and you notice that we have the embossing on the sides of these, and these are the inline engines, which are later warplanes, but it's the same idea. I mean, you're going to see the illustrations done by the same fellow. His name's on the front somewhere. If you want me to mention it, I will. Jerry Redding. Jerry Redding was the illustrator. And this sold pretty well, too. I think we brought this out at Origins 82, along with Axis and Allies. That was a big show for us.
Wow.
We had this new. We had Axis and Allies coming out new, but we were all the way on the left coast. We even from Connecticut, so we had to truck everything out there. These got lost. They went to Los Angeles instead of San Francisco.
Oh, no.
And we're panicking the first night, going like, what do we do? What do we do? We're going to blow the show here. Books aren't here. Where could they be? And the carrier was, I think, FedEx. And I said to Jim, I said, well, try calling another city. Call FedEx down. And he calls Los Angeles. I swear you, this is true. I'm in the hotel room with him, and he calls Los Angeles, and he describes what it is, and it's like 1 a.m. or 12. I don't know when it was. It was late.
Yeah.
I'm out of sequence because it's 3 hours the other way, and I was cockeyed. Point is, this guy goes, yeah, I see that there's a box here that says this right in front of me. Don't lay it out of your sight. Where are you? We're coming down. And Jim got in a car and he drove to Los Angeles.
Really?
Oh my goodness!
To pick them all up.
They weren't gonna, he went overnight, got the thing, drove it all the way back, and we had it by Saturday. So he was gone every day. He was because SF to LA is not exactly a walk, around the corner.
No.
We had rental cars, and he just drove it all the way down, there, and got the books and drove them back, and we had them by Saturday.
Wow, dedication.
Yeah.
What happened to you after Nova? Did you get out of gaming too? Or
yes.
your computer
I had the only thing I tried to do was, not being associated with Nova anymore. I had Desert Blitzkrieg, which I had designed in another form. Well, by 1982, I had it close to, in a rudimentary form of the game it is today. And I knew we weren't going to publish it. So I trotted it around. There was a magazine called Counterattack.
Counterattack.
Mm-hmm. They only came out with 3 issues before they went belly up. Well, they were on issue 2. And I met the guy at one of the shows and described the game. He said, yeah, I sent it. So I sent him the copy. He sent me $200 in a contract. I signed it. It was going to come out in issue number 5. And then after issue 3 came out, he sends me a note, says, I'm sorry, we're going out of business. And he sent me he didn't ask for the $200 back, but he sent me the prototype back. And I thought it was done. And then I sent it a year or two goes by, and Ty Bomba was running S&T then out of World. Was it World Games by then? Well, whatever it might be. It might have been Decision Games by then. Whatever. It was 91, 92. I sent it out to him, and I got a nice rejection letter. He said that if it was Hex Encounter, they probably would have published it, but because it was point to point, and West End had just come out with a point to point North Africa game, and I'm going like, you mean there's 15 Hex Encounters, and because there's only 2 point to point? He said it wasn't because he didn't like the game. It was because they didn't want to compete with the point to point thing, and because it wasn't popular. Well, it's popular now, point to point, a lot of point to point games.
Yeah.
So that's funny. When I got the go ahead to get it published at Compass. Lo and behold, about a month later, I get an email from Ty Bamba. It says, "How about an article for Paper Wars?" Compass is
Exactly.
everyone like, "Oh my God, this is such a small industry." So I sent him a note. I said, "Sure, but this is what I want to do. I want to do the history that I've just briefly described." And because I still had the prototypes from 1980, I still kept them on a, like drawn on the back of a napkin kind of stuff. It's a little more than that, but you get the idea, on crayon, And so I took pictures of everything, and I said, and I also have, and I sent him a copy of the rejection letter. I said, remember this? I would like to make this part of the article. He goes back, "This is funny. Put it in. I have no problem." That Ty, when he was running S&T, rejected it, and now it's being published, and he wants an article about it from me. So, small world. You never know. The big wheel keeps on turning.
Yeah, exactly. And
stay involved.
In this industry, it does. It's very strange. So much that is old comes back as new, and it is it'd be great to get involved in this industry at like age 16 or 20 because you'll see all your products come through several times.
Just hang in there.
Really.
Just hang in there.
Wow.
Yeah. I thought.
So when did you get back into interested in pitching for your old games, whatever? Because time
2 years after COVID, it's 2022. Compass comes out with, again, we're back to Jedco. They come out with an updated, a 21st century graphics copy of Russian Campaign and African Campaign. I always liked John's take, a little bit different than the old Avalon Hill games, and actually I liked Russian Campaign better than Stalingrad personally, but whatevs. Nice updated graphics. I wanted a copy, so I ordered it from Compass, both of them. But I said, I live less than an hour away from you guys, and I used to drive down to Hartford every day for my job, so the commute didn't bother me, and plus I'd go off peak anyway. So I called them up and I said, I don't want to pay the shipping. Is it okay if I come down and pick them up myself? And they said, sure. And so having also read on their website that they were looking for content, I threw Desert Blitzkrieg in the back of the car. And when I got there, I asked to meet Bill and Billy if they had the time, and they said they did. So just got to wait. So they finished a team meeting, and then somebody came out and got me, and I got to meet Billy, and he started saying, "Oh, you're old Nova. Do you know this guy?" And anyway, so it became Old Homes Week. In fact, it says, and he goes to me, he goes, "You got anything?" Says, "As a matter of fact, I do." And I showed him the game, and again, it's going to sound strange perhaps to some folks, but he takes a look at it. And again, I didn't have a decent prototype. I think I've been working on it for 20 years. And he said, "Yeah, we'll publish that. Just make sure it's done." "Oh, and can it be played solitaire?" That was the second question. I said, "Of course."
And then you have Iberian Tide, which is somewhat modeled after Greg Smith's Tide system and series, right?
It is exactly modeled after.
Okay, and it's Spanish Civil War, Ryan.
Spanish Civil War. And Greg is the co-designer, by the way.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Greg did the cards, the solitaire bot, and is chief consultant on a lot of the rules. That when I want to change, when I want to twist something a little bit different to fit the situation, I blow it by him just to see if. And sometimes he has a comment to make, and other times he said, but most of the time he says, "Just do it." Yeah. But I try to include him on that rather than just make a lot of unilateral decisions. As a matter of fact, I talked to him via email today about some minor tweaks I wanted to do to, as Wes and I were speaking about it earlier. That what happened just today. I think we're done. I'm pretty much done, but that's how we're doing it. We're working really well together.
That's good.
But that whole thing was my first Compass Expo was 2022. Okay. And November, and I go there not knowing what to expect. I had a prototype of Desert Blitzkrieg with the art. I made it up from the final art, laminated the cards. I went out, and I had a couple people play test it at the show. While I was there, I bump in, I meet Greg, and he asked me if I would play test Rebel Tide, and I go, "Okay, card driven, huh? This sounds fascinating." And we got another fellow who had some more Civil War history than I did. I mean, not that I don't know anything about it. Of course I do, but this guy was like, steeped up to his eyebrows in it. So between the two of us, I'm looking at it from how's the game playing, and he's looking at it, says, well, things like, why isn't Washington fortified? It should be a fortification. So we're going like, yeah, and any tweaks, yeah. So we were making changes on the fly. Greg's sitting there very patiently, nice guy, taking notes. He told me later, I spent 5 hours on this with this other fella, basically all of Thursday, almost half of Thursday. And I said, yeah. He came back and sent me an email later, said he took all of our changes and incorporated
wow.
the game. So while I'm there, I said, I like this so much, I'm going to pick up a copy of his Imperial Tide, which had been out, and try this myself because I like the card-driven thing. Well, sure enough, what happens is I get COVID in the last day of the show. I come home and I got a quarantine. Fortunately, my wife was out of town, and I kept away from my boys who were still at home, and they're 20-somethings. And I said, just leave me alone. I'm going up to the room. You guys are on your own. And I went incubated. And I got this game with me. So I figured, what the heck, after I felt better after about a day or so. And I put it on the floor and I played through it. I said, I love this, the way this system works. It's so cool. So I had Greg's card, and I called him up after I got better, 10 days later. And I said, hey, Greg, remember me from the show? Yeah. And that's when he told me he put all this stuff for Rebel Tide in. I said, well, I have a question for you. So I went over Imperial Tide. I really like the system. And I just finished Desert Blitzkrieg. I want to do a desert treatment using this system because I think it's going to be a simpler game. It's going to still deliver the history. It's going to be a lot of fun. I just want to try it. Do you have any problems with that? He goes, not at all. It's just got to get Compass to agree to publish it. So my next port of call I called up Compass, and they said, sure. So I did Desert Tide, which is on their site. They sent it off. It's off to the printers. I got told last week. So it's out there. The next stop is getting the proof copy back whenever that happens.
Yeah.
But it's in the pipeline, available for pre-order. And then so I go back with that at the next show. Greg plays it with me for a couple of not the whole game, but a couple of go rounds. He says, this is Tide. He says, you can do. He says, this is good. This is Tide. And then he comes back to me later. He goes, how about we do one of these together? You bet. What do you want to do? He said, I don't know. What do you want to do? I said, how about the Spanish Civil War? I think that's been really uncovered. He said, okay, we'll do that. So we got a book. We read Beevor. We both read Beevor independently. And then while we were doing that, I made up a map, a proto map, and we started figuring out, based on what we read, how we wanted the armies to work.
Yeah.
And we went from there. He made up all the cards, and we put prototype cards, and I started making a counter manifest, and with all the Tide stuff fit in, and it seems to be working out. We're pretty happy with it.
Yeah. Very cool.
And I don't think I'm telling any stories out of school here, but we're going to do Vietnam next.
Okay.
It has the operating title. I don't know if this will be final, but it's the operating title of Mekong Tide.
Oh, okay.
The Vietnam Tide just didn't do it for anybody.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
We said Mekong Tide.
Nam Tide or something. But
Well, again,
yeah.
I said, it's a working title. I don't know if it'll be the final title, but it's something to get started. So I've got all these books on my list now that Father's Day is coming up. I just told my wife, you have to buy me this.
Yeah. I know it's always a list of books now.
Yeah, I got to do. I'll do more than one on this one, I think.
Ryan did he was developer for a Spanish Civil War game, Land and Freedom.
Mentioned that
very recently. I mean, that was what, a year, 2 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And
How was your experience, Ryan, to turn the interview tables around a little?
Well, luckily, the designer, Alex Knight, already had a really well developed game. So it really didn't require a whole ton from me. I found him through Twitter. Actually, I was most interested originally in a game on John Brown that he had.
Oh, okay.
And I was very seriously thinking about suggesting to Blue Panther to sign that. But after playing a couple times, it just didn't feel right for us. And I said, "What else do you have?" He said, "Well, I have Russian Revolution and I have the Spanish Civil War."
Hmm.
And he said, "Well, the Russian one is going to probably go to GMT. I'm demoing that to them right now." I said, "Oh, that's fine. Do that." I said, "Let me see the Spanish one." And he demoed to me, and we just really loved the game. There it is. We loved the game so much when we played it. All of us that played it, that we quickly I suggested to Blue Panther, to Steve Jones, that this is a good game. Why don't you try it? He tried it. He liked it, and he ended up signing it, and we got it out very, very quickly. And it's done very well. It's done very, very well. And it's received quite a few awards.
You play, the players play as different factions of the Republicans against the system, which is the nationalists.
That's correct.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Interesting. See, because the whole cooperation thing, because everybody's got a different agenda. All the players will have a different agenda. Is what we experienced in reading Beevor and in Iberian Tide. It's a two-player, one national, one Republican. Right. But we found that both sides had factions that didn't really play nice with others.
Yeah. No, and there's some games out there that are exactly that, where they've divided it down into the various factions, and then you play multiple players against the other side like that.
Go ahead.
This one, as you said, was just you're focusing on defeating fascists, and partially that's because
once this is all in bed, I think I'll look up one of your games, and I may be interested. That intrigues me to see how that all works out. But I don't want to go. I got other Spanish Civil War games. I've got Crusade and Revolution. I've got España 1936, and I've barely looked at them because I don't want. For a number
influenced. Yeah.
No, yeah, I understand that. And we didn't look at a lot of other ones either. So
I have them, but I haven't really used them for any reason. I'm waiting to put this to bed, and then I'm gonna go check out when it's too late for me to change anything.
Yep.
No, I get that.
I felt like that a lot too on some certain
that's a common feeling. I think
I want to keep it as Greg's and mine concept as much as possible.
I get that. I get that a lot. Yeah.
So we're very proud of this, and I it just
you should be. Yeah.
You definitely should be.
The art the art should be out on their site pretty soon. I would say certainly it's over the summer. I could show it to you if I was better prepared, but I'm not. I brought all the Ace of Aces stuff up. Oh, I brought
that was cool to see.
I brought some Lost World stuff too. I have some information about that too. So.
Tell us about that, or explain what it is real quickly.
Sure.
For anybody doesn't know.
Because we went again. We're back in Nova days, and we weren't going to do board games, but we're going to do this picture book idea or book games with the movement keys down the bottom and illustrations. Mm-hmm. I started working on a sword fight game. That was what I got creative, and I was working at a small software company, and I got my boss. We had a little enclave in the middle that you could walk around. So I says, okay, we're going to call it the four corner offense or whatever. And I says, you stand there, I'm going to stand here. And he says, okay, I get this. How many different attitudes do we? And my boss is turning around in a circle, and I'm writing all this stuff down. And basically on a proof of concept of about a 10-page book, 12-page book, I showed the guys that it was basically Ace of Aces on its head. It was playing cowboys and Indians. You don't know where the other guy's going, but the books figure out, because you have all the possible combination of positions. You have a page for that. You can figure out where people are going to be. And so it's like the surprise of walking around a corner and bumping into the other guy. So what can you do with that? I eventually made Bounty Hunter out of that. Cowboys and Indians, or bad good guys in black hats and white hats, shooting at each other in a saloon. But before that one, I used that concept to try a swordplay game. And I was getting down the road, and then Al comes to me and says he also wanted to do that, and he had a more concept. They wanted to make it fantasy and basically try and get into the D&D thing by the back door, doing it this way. And I said, go ahead, Al. If you think you got a good idea, run with it. And he came up with Lost Worlds. These are the first two Lost Worlds books that came out. And, Man and Chain and Sword and Shield and a skeleton, kind of like the Ray Harryhausen skeleton from
sure.
You can get these on eBay.
Yep. And so
I might have to pick up one of these.
we had Arnie Starr do the end. So you have the moves down at the bottom, like sort of a la Ace of Aces, but it works different than Ace of Aces. It's not the same. Basically, it revolves around the character card that you have. And the character card explains. I know it's hard to see, but it all of this stuff here is all the different moves you can pick, and some of them are downswing, side swings, thrusts, fakes, protected attacks, left, high, low, overhead smash, dodge, wild swing, jump away, a whole panoply of things. You can make the guy do anything you want. The important part is there's only there's a certain X number of resolution pages. What are the results? As long as you make all of the actions funnel to the same set of results, you can have them do anything. You can call it what you want to call it. And so we worked on this out, and we all learned a couple of us learned how to do it. I ended up designing 3 or 4 characters in this series myself, and then we started modeling. That's me in the armor. I had color in my hair. And I wanted to, being a Star Trek nerd or geek or whatever you want to call it, I wanted to do a fantasy Gorn. So I designed this guy.
Oh, wow.
Lizard man. But he's a fantasy lizard man. He's not a Star Trek lizard man.
Right.
Make the head look a lot like the one in Star Trek.
Right.
Arnie Starr was the artist for most of these.
Wow.
Games.
Those are cool.
And we've got all kinds. I mean, there were 30 or something of these. I've got a whole pile of them here. And you can play against another one of the same type or any other.
Yeah,
that's the beauty of it.
That's pretty cool.
The system works really good. You can play the same guys against each other. You can play. We even had a dragon, which you don't want to take on one by yourself. So it gets a little more difficult. It's a frost, cold drake, frost drake. And you don't want to take this on by yourself because he's just too strong and he has too many hit points. You never kill him.
Do you have some news about?
I do.
New development for this?
Lost Worlds was actually, all of this was sold to a German company. I found that out last week. It's called Ulysses Spieler. It basically in English, Ulysses Games, Ulysses Gamer. They sold it to him almost 2 years ago, and they haven't come out with anything yet. So they don't know. They're not the Nova Games does not worry about it because it's out of their hands. Yeah. What their other news is they this powerhouse that I showed you here is being redone, and it had its Kickstarter and it's out there, and there's a video. It shows the digital copy that came back. It looks gorgeous. It's all in full color. Book's a little bigger. Looks very well done. I have ordered a copy. I mean,
Yeah, definitely. Me too.
I want one. Yeah. And they have plans on doing the brown ones, the rotary series, the flying machines, which I didn't bring up, which is the green ones, the really early planes that the other two games just destroy. They're good against each other, but they're not very good against the other games. Yeah. You can do it, but you won't last very long because they're so slow. And then Peter told me that Peter Roos, the fellow that kind of runs things now there, that they've designed the two-seater, which we've been talking about back in 1981. We were talking about designing the two-seater, and it just never happened. He says it's done, and it's Mayfair / Mr. B. It's Mayfair Games. Oh. You see the imprint on it. It has Mayfair imprint, Mr. B imprint, and the Nova imprint. Got all three of them on the advertising page. And so Mr. B says that they're going to. He says that it's not for certain, but they're probably going to pick that up as well and do that one. If they can sell these, if these sell, they'll do the two-seater as well. And that'll be something brand new that we never got around to doing.
Yeah. How did the Kickstarter end up doing? I thought they did pretty
very well. 3,247 backers.
Yeah.
Almost $190,000.
Yeah. 3,200. So they're guaranteed to sell. They should be going for $5,000 to start. 5,000 copies. I mean, to start.
Yeah.
Sell them.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no.
That's pretty good.
And the last bit of news they gave me is they actually I check the Novus website every so often, but they haven't put anything new on there in a long time. Well, Peter says they just put something new on it. They have a card game called Sway the Jury, which is a pure card game where, and I've actually tested it once. It's a fun little item. It's cute. It's a deck of cards, and you're each a lawyer trying to get the jury to find for your side. And you have to use the cards to interview witnesses and the like. And they have particular, it's kind of Clue-like in that you have to match up their strengths and weaknesses with how you're getting them to influencing them to get an answer that you want.
Yeah.
It's simple, but it was intriguing. It was an interesting play, but he wanted me to mention that, so I have.
Oh, very cool. All right. Well, congratulations to them.
I told him I'd mention
that.
So something new on their website, and they're actually selling it. So
Yeah,
cool. I didn't even know they were still around. That's
they are. I talk to the fellows every once in a while. I haven't talked to Al in a year, but I'm kind of hesitant to go down there and bother him because I know he's struggling. So I talked to the two other fellows, that Peter and the Dennis Greasy, who's the guy who's doing the development on the Roman game. So
well, it's all very interesting to Ryan and me because we are a new startup small kind of thing, but we want to do it right. And then to hear these stories, is both inspiring and educational for us. So really appreciate it, Mike.
Yeah, we really do appreciate it, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy
I love your stories and all that you've told us about, how things went down through the history and the new things. I know you have a time lag. You're bringing that back 2.0, and if you can correct me if I don't describe it exactly right, but it's science fiction in the future. And a big part of the gist is when you're traveling planet to planet to try to, attack your enemy or something, well, you're going at near the speed of light. And so you'll get there really quick, but time went by considerably for the people there. So they're at a later age, so they might have a higher technology.
Correct.
And different things like that. And so as part of your computations and figuring out what you're going to do, you have to account for all that.
Yeah, it's a ship.
The elevator pitch.
Yeah, you did. No, that's pretty close. Yeah, that's basically it. It's a ship-to-ship game. It's not. There's no ground pound. It's all. You have a small fleet, and you start out with Tech 1, and you try to get up to Tech 7, and as you go up the tech ladder, your ships get better. You get fewer of them, but they're stronger. It's sort of chess-like, but it keeps the unit density is down. You have to make some very strategic decisions in order to get across the map to the other fella. And then the new content is it was originally a 2-player game, and now it has a 3 and a 4-player as well. This fellow's a solitaire kind of bot, like the Tide games where you have stances, defensive, probing, aggressive, and defensive. And there's a key that gets you from one to the other is certain things the bot has to do if certain things happen. So you play against the bot as a solitaire.
Gotcha.
Well, the whole idea of adding, time travel, worrying about time within a game, that is something new and has not been explored.
Well, it's relative. Yeah, it's definitely relativity because the assumption I'm making is that everybody travels as close to the speed of light as you can. So that's a premise, but you can't travel any faster than that. However, there are wormholes. I call them collapsars, and the whole game map is groups of collapsars that function together, except one of them can function to get you across the map to a special group. There's 2 special groups of 4 in the center that can be traveled to from one of the 4 of any of the other systems. So you can end up going all the way across the map, but you have to funnel through the same center to get anywhere. So it makes the game fight over those areas unless you figure out a way to get around them. But that's
Very interesting.
costly in terms of time
Right.
passage.
Yeah.
Passage is a big deal. That happens on a separate track. It just sort of like moves, and
Yeah.
And you get, as the time moves, you can get a technology increase from that, or you can buy one.
Yeah.
So there's some
Pretty cool.
So you got
Very
decisions to
interesting.
make on what to spend, and but it's very simple, very beer and pretzels. I mean, it sounds cerebral, but it's because of the low. Because anytime you start talking about relativity to people, sometimes their eyes glaze over.
Yeah.
I didn't want that, so it's very simple. I have an example in the rules that says, think of it in terms of this airplane that has interstellar capability from this time period, and then they go somewhere, and by the time it's 20 years later, it was the interstellar Stuka versus F4 Phantom. They get there, but they run into an F4, and you're like, what do I do now? So that's basically it. So you can't just jump and bums rush anybody. You have to plan, build bases, get new ships, inch your way across the board.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I can't wait to try that one out.
but it is a beer and pretzels thing. There's a lot of yelling, and there's some cards that break the rules.
Yeah.
And
Very cool.
it's
To
fun.
check that out.
Well,
Well, thank you, Mike. We really
Yeah.
appreciate you being on with us.
we told you it'd be 30 minminutes, and we just
know.
did an hour.
in an hour here.
But it's been a lot
You gotta
of
go
fun.
to the editing room, right?
It's been fun.
No,
Yeah,
I don't. You had too many good stories to edit out, so we'll be including this whole thing on. But we just want to thank you again, and thank you for sharing these stories, and thank you for sharing everything that you have coming out. And I'll definitely include some links to some of the stuff in the Rat Chat when we put it out, so that people can go directly to your stuff. But again, just thanks for being on here and being on Rat Chat.
Yeah.
And again, I'm Ryan,
And I'm Wes, and you
are.
are.
Guys, I'm Mike Vitale. It's been a pleasure, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ryan here again, having a great time at Origins. You can see Wes there in the background. He's busy demoing a game of a Forlorn Hope. But I thought I'd take the time while I had it to go over the giveaway for this month. We have a giveaway of SPW's Tannenberg and Galicia, and a really great intro World War I game. If you don't have it, this was a great one, hopefully to win. And we're going to go straight over to the spinner right now and figure out who our winner is.
Second.
Congratulations to our winner. I will be in contact with you and get you out your game as soon as possible. And now we have another great offering for next month's Rat Chat, and here it is.
Absolutely.
Thanks everybody for joining us, and thank you to Mike Vitale for that fantastic interview. Wes, what do we have coming up next?
Well, next for Wharf Rats, we're going to WBC. That's July 31st to August 2nd. We will be in the vendor hall. We'll be demoing a Forlorn Hope and our second game too. And we hope to see you there.
Yep, that's what, July 31st through August 2nd.
Yep.
We'll have contest games, free giveaways, used games for sales, a lot of other cool stuff going on. And I hope you can join us. Don't forget to get on our mailing list so you can find out the information about what's going on and also to qualify for the next game giveaway.
Yep.
Take care. I've been Ryan.
I'm Wes.
And we'll see you later.
Yes,